from Singapore. Our presentation focuses on a pilot study that we carried out on HyFlex and student engagement. A bit more about us. Shirley is a staff developer, while I am a deputy director, also an academic staff from one of the schools in Temasek Polytechnic. A little about Singapore. Singapore is a city state located in Southeast Asia, just below the tip of West Malaysia. This picture shows the beautiful skyline of the Marina Bay Sand and the Esplanade Theatre on the left hand side, and many skyscrapers in the CBD area on the right hand side. Singapore is a country with high internet connectivity. About Temasek Poly or TP. TP is a post-secondary academic institution located in Tampines, Singapore. It is the third polytechnic established in the country. Temasek Polytechnic has an industry-focused curriculum, which is an alternative to a broader-based junior college and pre-university education. Temasek Polytechnic features 37 full-time and more than 40 part-time diploma courses spread over 6 academic schools. Currently, Temasek Polytechnic has approximately over 13,000 full-time students and more than 1,200 academic and administrative staff. There are many recreation and sports facilities in TP, as shown in this picture and next. Right, now we get back to our presentation, how it all started. Some of us in the school collaborate closely with staff developers like Shirley, and we have been experimenting with EdTech tools and hybrid learning. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck Singapore in 2020, school had to pivot to online home-based learning or HBL, and subsequently, some of us employed HyFlex learning during the reopening phases when COVID cases were better managed in Singapore. Within Temasek Polytechnic, during the opening phases of post-COVID period, schools had to comply with safe management measures. We had to limit the number of students on campus in order to mitigate the risk of mass COVID transmission. Many of us did what we could for our students. Today's presentation is also our way of saying thank you to all teaching staff who tried their best for their students during the COVID pandemic and beyond. What is HyFlex learning? It is really about catering more flexibility in the mode of participation for learners. A HyFlex session is attended by both online and remote learners. Pre-COVID, our team conducted a pilot study on HyFlex learning in the October 2020 semester. The insights and experiences learned from the pilot use cases help propel a full-scale HyFlex learning in my school since the April 2021 semester. As Singapore continues to recalibrate her safe management measures for reopening phases post COVID-19 lockdown. Post COVID, we continue to offer HyFlex because of the flexibility it offers learners. Now, students who cannot attend class physically can opt to join the class remotely. For the Polytechnic, it's also about being prepared for another pandemic and for business continuity reasons. Our HyFlex learning pilot in 2020 was the first reported use case in Temasek Polytechnic. Our team employed innovation strategies to pivot the school's teaching and learning practices with active and sustained hybrid class engagement during the COVID-19 pandemic while fostering strong buy in from academic staff and learners. The project was part of our school's digital transformation, and with positive feedback from stakeholders, this has led to further investment of higher technology to enhance the experience. In terms of strategies and capabilities, the beauty of HyFlex learning implementation is that it can be executed either using higher technology or simple technology, making this pedagogy readily adaptable and scalable in all learning environments in the Polytechnic. In terms of resources and processes, the HyFlex learning was implemented in a way that any learner could learn together, anywhere, anytime, quarantine or not. Our school engaged academic staff to make adoption of HyFlex simple and fast-free while respecting the autonomy of academic staff in his or her classroom. Post-COVID, when learners need to stay at home due to respiratory related symptoms and other reasons, if they wish to, they could join a HyFlex class remotely. The HyFlex learning in our faculty promoted the practice of fair engagement of both on-site and remote learners who attended the same hybrid class. Social and cognitive engagement had to be carefully crafted at lesson planning stage as well. During class, for example, we learned not to neglect remote learners. They would give us thumbs up or like to inform us that they can follow the discussion. We also cater whole of class activities through discussion chat and edtech tools such as ClassPoint, Padlet, etc. This picture on the left-hand side show a colleague in a simple HyFlex configuration using a wireless earpiece conducting his HyFlex class via Microsoft Teams. While the picture on the right-hand side showing me in another pilot HyFlex configuration where there is a smart board, a student gallery wall featuring remote learners. The HyFlex pilot study would like to find out more about student engagement in the HyFlex learning environment in Temasek Polytechnic. Next, I'll pass the time to my presenter, Shirley, to share more about the pilot studies. Over to you, Shirley.
Thank you, Jinhin. I'll now share a little about our student engagement pilot study, which was conducted in the October 2020 semester. Unbeknownst to the team, the insights and experiences learned from this particular pilot study helped to propel a full-scale HyFlex learning within the School of Applied Science at Temasek Polytechnic, which was really useful when COVID hit us. I'll share a bit more about the instrument that we use in the first part of our pilot study. This is the Birch Engagement Survey tool. Well, first up is the emotional engagement. It encompasses both positive and negative reactions to teachers, classmates, academics, and schools, and is presumed to create ties to an institution and influence willingness to work. It refers to students' affective reactions in the classroom, including interest, boredom, happiness, sadness, and anxiety. Next up is physical engagement. This relates to the extent to which people expend their efforts, both physically and mentally, as they go about their work. Lastly, cognitive engagement. Well, it draws from the idea of investment. It incorporates thoughtfulness and willingness to exert the effort necessary to comprehend complex ideas and master difficult skills. There are two parts to this pilot study. Part one collected data about students' HyFlex learning. This was done at 2 points. firstly, at the midpoint of the HyFlex learning experience, and then two, at the end of the HyFlex learning experience, the total number of participants for this particular study was 26. And the part two of this study, which was the focus group, a total number of 8 participants uh, was involved in this part of the study. This is to glean a more in-depth understanding of the student engagement construct that we had done in part one of the study. Now over to the part one of the student engagement study, which was the quantitative part where 2 parts of the surveys were done. As I explained earlier, uh, the one here, PE1, which is the midpoint of the HyFlex learning experience. Some of you may ask why at midpoint? Because we wanted to wait for people to be more familiar with the HyFlex learning environment before we collected the data. Hence, we have PE1, which represents physical engagement 1, and PE2, which is the second survey at the end of the HyFlex learning exposure. So similarly, emotional engagement for EE1 and emotional engagement EE2, which is the second survey. And cognitive engagement, we have CE F to F, that means face to face, first survey, followed by the second survey. Okay, assumingly this is a rather small view, so I will expand this view for you. As you can see here, the physical engagement. In the second instance, it had gone up a little. Emotional engagement as well. And all the 3 variables, you can see that the mean score actually went up. And for the cognitive engagement, we have face-to-face as well as the HBL, which is the home-based learning part of HyFlex. Okay, you can see that there's also a rise in there. So that is our quantitative part of the study. And we go to the part two of the study, which is the qualitative component. And this is what we have found out. 5 key themes that came out from this particular focus group interview. And they are challenges and benefits in HyFlex learning, social interaction, technical challenges, learning strategies, self-regulation. So we'll look at it in a bit detail. So here is the slide on challenges. The students found that it was hard to work around the newfound freedom where they need to monitor their own learning. So most students recognize that the online part of HyFlex learning needed different strategies, but they were quite uncertain about the right strategies to use. They also couldn't articulate what they don't know, claiming that it was hard for them to speak up, especially when they are dialing in from home. Some were also afraid of speaking up online. They also had to straddle between the face-to-face and online classes, which brought about a bit of confusion, as stated by student E here. Some benefits. Most students like the flexibility in HyFlex learning. Most of the HyFlex learning sessions were recorded, so they found that it was very easy to review the lessons. In the home-based part of HyFlex learning, they also like the fact that they can get up late and yet be on time for class. Social interaction. Students found that in the face-to-face aspect of HyFlex learning, it was relatively easier for them to connect with their fellow classmates as well as their lecturers. And student S mentioned that face to face makes me feel more of a sense of belonging. And student E mentioned that face to face session in the HyFlex learning, the concentration level was a lot higher because there's this atmosphere where everyone is paying attention. And then there's also, it gives a bit of peer pressure. And then the next student also mentioned that for online aspects of HyFlex learning, you're just staring at a screen, then there's not much interaction between the teacher and student. So it's like something different about human to human interaction. Okay, that was from the students. So technical challenges, they were unfamiliar with the platform. When we first started, we were using the WebEx platform, so most people were unfamiliar with it. Moreover, there were some technical issues such as frozen screen while the lecturer was talking, and it made following the class very difficult. When the home Wi-Fi was weak, the experience was really bad for the students. In some instances, some students were unable to see the lecturer's slides during the session. So we also found that there were some students with hardware issues on top of weak Wi-Fi. Learning strategies. Students realized that different approaches were needed in the two formats of HyFlex learning. Taking notes, peer discussion, and asking lecturers questions were the key learning strategies they applied in the face-to-face HyFlex learning environment. However, these strategies were not easily transferred to the online aspect of HyFlex learning. So the student found that it was difficult to keep up with their old routine within the online environment. Lastly, self-regulation. Students found that they procrastinated a lot in the online aspect of HyFlex learning. They found that they were easily distracted and they did not find the urgency of learning, as the recorded sessions would always be there for them. They were also not sure of what kind of learning strategies to use in order to help them persist in their learning. Some of the students tried out new learning strategies, others used old strategies that work well in the face to face HyFlex environment, but did not work well within the online HyFlex environment. We come to the findings. Students were generally well engaged in the HyFlex learning environment. We noted that persistence and effort maintained in learning were considerably high. Hence, it showed that there was a fair amount of motivation for learning. We also noted that cognitive engagement was significantly higher in the face to face environment within the HyFlex learning mode compared to the online mode. Overall, students found that there were opportunities for them to engage with peers and lecturers. Lastly, we found that students do not automatically know how to learn in this fairly new environment. especially within the online aspects of HyFlex learning.